Welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam Smith, and inside this GameFound previous series, I am very excited to be showing you Threshold, coming from Open Owl Studios. It's landing on GameFound in the very near future. You'll find the exact date and the campaign page link in the pinned comment and video description. Now, if you haven't had a chance to check out my prototype unboxing, I definitely recommend you do if you want to see all the components up close, as some of them may not show up during gameplay. The purpose of this video is to take you through the learning steps of how to play Threshold. And be sure to stay tuned to the channel and subscribe, as we'll be diving further into Threshold beyond this video. Before I begin with how to play it, let's learn a bit more about what Threshold is all about. We'll also go over all the components here at a high level, so you have an understanding of what you're looking at, and we'll talk about some things happening during the crowdfunding campaign and how things, of course, will be different than what you can see here in the final version, because everything here is prototype and subject to change. Thousands of years ago, in an era long forgotten, swirling vortexes appeared across Haven. Throngs of refugees fled through these thresholds, pursued by nightmarish horrors. These were the last humans of their world, hunted to near extinction during the Great Conflict. Buoyed by the hope of an untarnished land, these remnants of humanity rallied to vanquish the horrors and seal the thresholds. As history faded from memory, the hard-earned lessons of the past were lost to time. Greed for personal gain grew, and eventually war spread throughout the nations of Haven. Today marks 200 years of peace since the Great Haven War. People from all over have gathered to commemorate the occasion with a grand summer celebration. The streets of Harstead are filled with folk from Heartland Prairies, Sandstone Desert, Red Cat River Valley, Ridgeback Mountains, and beyond. But the months-long celebration of peace has been shattered. The thresholds of old have reappeared, leading to panic and confusion across all of Haven. Some brave citizens, such as yourselves, have fought back the first wave outside the town of Bayfort, but more monsters are pouring out each day. The leaders of the Haven Council have been quiet, huddled in secret meetings to discuss these troubled signs. Leaders and civilians alike desperately hope for heroes of this age to emerge. You begin your journey in Bayfort, wounded from the fight. The prototype that I have has 2 heroes included. Of course, there'll be more beyond this in the final version of the game, and the one I've chosen to use is the Guardian. I'll be playing true solo, but you can absolutely play solo multi-handed, controlling multiple characters. This is the back side of the artwork for the character I've selected, the Guardian. It also shows additional information like innate skills, starting items, starting class cards, starting innate skill cards, and starting item skill cards. When you're choosing a hero in the game, you're choosing its class. Guardian is my class, and it comes along with a number of things specific to the Guardian, like their own deck, as well as some specific items to start off with, generic tokens used for everybody, like fatigue, your health, as well as your wound trackers. There's a number of dials across the bottom to track XP. You'll also see some coins. I start with 15 on the far right side. These dials are going to correlate to cards we can pick up later on. For every hero in the game, they'll get a character sheet. In the very top, you'll place the character's name if they're part of a party. In other words, 2 or more characters or players are playing. Then you're going to go ahead and put a party name in my case, True Solo. Don't need to do that. Top left, we have a max of 6 health, which correlates to what is on our dashboard down here. And then we also have in the top right-hand corner, wounds, and that's going to be set at max 0 because we currently don't have any yet. But per the narrative we just read, we'll be going ahead and pulling a wound into our deck in just a moment, once I actually show you what's in our deck first. Now, through the center of the character pad, you're going to see the breakdown of all the different levels that you can move through with your character, and the very first level will be 10 XP. Now, down below is a skills list out. You'll see I have 3 of them checked, and they are going to correspond to what you can see right on the items, the starting items, which I have a splintered sword, which has Bladecraft, and then broken sword has the keyword Aegis. And then on the left-hand side in this area, you'll see in brackets Bladecraft as well. Now, I chose the Guardian, but there was this other cool character called the Mystic, and you can actually take a look at the back of the Mystic here if you want to pause the screen and read this. Again, a different loadout for this character in terms of the different skills that are tied to the Mystic, and some differences in terms of the types of cards and items that it's going to start with. So creating your starting deck for your character is very easy, as you just follow what's exactly on the back of the illustration here. So for example, the starting class card specific to the Guardian will give you dash, defensive stance twice, and 2 strikes. That's the first 5 for your deck. The other 5 come from your class-specific innate skill cards. So in the case of the Guardian, 2 swordplay, 2 guard, and 1 second wind. Now in Threshold, your deck is not just a pile of cards, it is truly your character. It's going to represent everything about them, their skills, their gear, their spells, even good and bad things that can happen to them along the way on their adventure. So as you level up and earn rewards, you're going to be adding new cards into this deck. If you get hurt or suffer setbacks, wounds and burdens will slip right into your deck as well, and over time your deck evolves to reflect your unique journey in the game. So as we read the narrative of the story, we're supposed to take a wound card, and when we take a wound card, we're going to shuffle the wound deck, which I'll show you some of the cards in this deck in just a moment. We're going to shuffle it up, draw one, and place it inside this deck. However, for the how to play, we're going to go ahead and ensure that we do not have a wound card in the starting 5 cards. So we're going to draw 5 cards from our deck first, and then we're going to shuffle the wound card into the rest of the deck, which is face down. So I've drawn up my 5 cards to start off. Got 2 defensive stance cards. I got a strike card, I got a dash card, and sword play. Before I shuffle the wound deck and pull one at random, let's take a look at the different types of wounds you can potentially get. Indecisive is one of them. There's also injured, and each one of these are going to have different game effects that are going to impact you. So whenever you take a wound, it's going to impact you in ways you may not expect, and you're not going to be consistently dealing with the same issues every single time. So that's going to throw a little bit of a wrench into your plans. So I've drawn a wound card off the deck, and it's going to get shuffled into my Guardian deck. All right, so the wound is now shuffled into our Guardian's deck, and there's 2 things I want to talk about around wounds. First off, back to the character sheet. Originally I had a 0 up here, but it should be a +1. I knew this, but I wanted to wait until this moment to talk about it because it just lines up nicely. So essentially your character has a maximum number of wounds to start off, and that will increase as you level up through the game. When you start off, you can see it right here, a max of 1. So make sure that's written on your character sheet, and that lets you know you can have at least 1 wound in your deck like we just did without any implication. Now, every single time that you gain a wound into your deck or you take one out, make sure to update the tracker in the top right-hand corner. This is your way of always knowing exactly how many wound cards are left in your deck, because, for instance, you might gain a wound during the beginning of the gameplay, like myself right here, but then not get another one until way later, and you might start to forget how many wounds are actually in your deck. This will be your way of managing it here up in the top right-hand corner. Now, why does it matter in terms of the max wounds? It matters in terms of if you go over your maximum wounds by 1, you go unconscious. Now, in terms of what happens when you go unconscious, I'm going to place all the details of that currently written in prototype form in the pinned comment. That is all subject to change, but it is as it is right now. Now, moving around the game board here, we have a number of other cards. This is a deck building game. You're going to be deck building your character, and you've got things like boons across the top. You've got yourself burdens, and you've got a number of other things across the bottom. These are considered others, like relic, threshold, title, and wound cards. Long story short, the majority of these are good burdens you don't want to see inside your deck, and you certainly don't want to see wounds. Now, the cards that you saw moments ago can all be gained through gameplay effects and different choices that you make as you go through your adventure, but these ones here are all tied to what's known as SP, which is skill points. Again, that ties back to what we talked about on the dashboard. You'll see the cost of the SP right in the very bottom middle of the card, and you'll see all the different types of skills you can go after to build out your deck, making your character more unique and tuned to what you want to do strategically. For example, we have Second Wind. This comes from the Momentum skill cards, and you'll see in the top left-hand corner, it is either going to be an immediate or a delayed card. Immediate is the Bolt. Sand Timer is for delayed cards. You'll see a cost associated if it costs anything to play the card. In this case, it is 0, which is awesome. And then you'll see some keywords there. Now, the keywords that really matter are the timing of the card itself. So, for instance, play and responds are going to give you the exact timing of when you can use the card during gameplay, whereas the white keywords are simply going to be referenced for other game effects as you go through the game. We'll see how that works later on. You'll see at the very bottom here, the SP value of this card is 1, so we could absolutely go after this if we had SP to spend, and then a maximum of 2 can be in your deck. I've actually got one of these in my deck already to start off the game, so I could get another one in there, and that would be my max. Now, the final thing I want to mention is in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see a value. In this case, it is 2. These numerical values are used during challenges. So, of course, as these cards eventually are purchased using skill points, they're inside of your deck, and you eventually will find challenges through gameplay. You will then draw cards off the top of your deck in order to fall within a range of success. The range of success for a check might be a single value. It might be 3 to 4, for example. Let's say, hypothetically, 3 to 4 is a success criteria, and you draw the top card of the deck. and its second win, this card would count as 2. So you haven't made it there just yet, and what you're doing is playing a blackjack style of gameplay to try to land inside that range, and there's even some bonuses sometimes on certain challenges if you land the exact result that you need. Now, you can modify your results of the card if the actual keywords that are shown on the card in white are actually referenced in the challenge. It gives you the ability to modify it by a +1 or a -1. So for instance, if I pulled this card on a perfect 3 challenge, this would be a fail to start, but if it had the keyword luck, I could increase this 2 to a 3, and that would be bang on exactly what I need. Now, before we move on to the final couple things, just talking about the tray here and the region board, and we're ready to go, I do want to make one mention around the cards. You're going to notice that they're just kind of strewn out all over the place here, and they actually take up quite a bit of space. But in the final version, there will be card storage, which is going to reduce this way down, and that's going to allow you to essentially just have, if you're playing True Solo, one character dashboard, your region board. You're going to have a dashboard here for your quest, your dice, your cards, all of your tokens here. You have a couple booklets, and that's literally it, with a card tray to the side. So it'll be very, very condensed. You're looking at probably less than a 3x3 space, probably even less than that. It might even be in a 2x2, and everything's going to be tightly within a square. Now, this is known as the region tray. In the top left-hand corner, you have memory tokens, and then underneath that, you have completed tokens, which are check marks. Underneath that, you got coins of value 10 and 50. Below that, 1s and 5s. Below that, you have item cards of various ranking, whether it's common, uncommon, or rare. Now, beside that, you have the affix cards, which essentially are transparent cards, which will boost items that you get in the game. You essentially lay these cards on top, and it overlays a new effects and new abilities and new skills on top of the cards you already have, which is pretty awesome. Now, going up the token side over here, you have minerals, then you have supplies, then essence. At the very top there, a number of mob and boss tokens. Now, at the very, very top in the center, you'll see an adventure deck, which is a standard size deck. It says Broken Wheel. We'll be talking about that in a second. Renown cards are beside it, the mini cards, and on the far right-hand side, tracking for quests. You're going to see a number of ridges. In the final version, you'll be able to place all these cards in here, and it will be cut in a way that keeps everything organized and just kind of the top sections of the active ones that you're currently going on visible. And then you have tokens, so you can easily place these out into the region for each quest that's active that you're working on. You'll also notice a number of loot dice in the center going from common to uncommon to rare. Now, the adventure deck has some cards outside the tray right now. Per the how to play, certain cards are not included from the very beginning and are only added through choices that I make or gameplay effects that occur. Last but not least, we got the region board as well as the region book and encounter book that are going to be tied right to it in terms of your exploration. It's worth mentioning that this region is for levels 1 to 15. There'll be various regions in the final version of the game. You actually heard me mention some during the narrative portion of this video earlier, and those different regions will allow you to explore at higher levels. As the narrative told us earlier, we're starting off in Bayford, and so our character has its token up there as well. You'll notice there's a number of actual roads within the map. As long as you're journeying from adjacent region to adjacent region along a road, it's only going to cost you 1 card in order to move. If you're moving from one region to the next and there is no road, it'll cost you 2 cards discarded in order to move. That's going to do it for the setup and the overview. Let's now dive into some quick narrative, and we'll head right into checking out the very first quest, which is Pie Delivery. Victory over the invading monsters has brought some renown. However, the battles left their mark. While the discomfort is a constant source of distraction, the gratitude of the community makes it worthwhile. Only now the people are nervous to wander the lands, and so they come to you for help. Every quest that you run into is going to have a recommended level. In this case, it's 0, which is perfect for us. A quest location, found the illustration in the center, and a short story on the front at the bottom. This quest says Dren, Harsted's premier pie maker, wants to make his signature cloverberry pies to welcome the leaders of the Haven Council. We are blessed to have such luminaries in our humble city, Dren says. Sadly, Dren has run out of cloverberries and asked you to fetch some. Beware of the bandits, though. They've been more active lately for some reason. Now, as we can see from the illustration on the card, it tells you exactly which region to place in it. It's going to be between this encampment right here and Rivertoe. So we're going to place the corresponding icon that matches in that space. So we're now heading into our very first round. Play flows through the rounds, and each round has the same rhythm whether you're exploring the overworld or fighting in combat. And you can decide the turn order inside of each round if you have multiple characters or players around the game table. Now, how a round is broken down is you have the resolving of any start of round effects. Inside of the next portion is the character turn, which you have 4 steps inside of each character turn. Your start of turn, resolving any effects in combat, performing actions, which allow you to spend cards from your hand to perform overworld or combat actions, depending on which one you're in, ending your turn, which is resolving any end of turn effects, and then resetting, discarding any remaining cards you have in hand, and drawing a brand new 5 cards. When drawing up your new 5 cards, if you don't have enough cards in your deck, you're going to shuffle your discard pile to create a new deck, but you will take 1 fatigue, and there's implications on that inside of the gameplay we'll touch on later on. When all the characters are done their turn, you move to the enemy turn, where you draw and resolve the top card of the enemy's combat deck, and you place and resolve the card deck in the enemy's discard pile after using it, and then you head to end of round, simply rolling and resolving the region die, and then you're going to resolve any end of round effects. And that is an entire structure of a round, so we're starting at the very beginning. We don't have any resolving of start of round effects, so we go right into our character turn, where we can go ahead and resolve any specific character start of turn effects, which we still don't have, so we can now perform actions. Now, as much as I want to drive right towards the quest and complete it, we're inside of what's known as a landmark, and we know it's a landmark because of the banner behind the words for Bayfort. So that allows us to go inside the Heartland Prairies region book and check to see what's going on inside the city and take any landmark actions we want to do. Whenever you check out the region book for a landmark, you'll always find flavor text, which is worth reading to better understand the location you're in. Bayfort says, built to protect the Heartland Prairie during the Great War, Bayfort provides a natural port on Barrier Bay. Increases in trade have seen the town grow in recent years. Bayfort isn't far from anywhere in the Heartland Prairies, making its location ideal for future growth. And yet Bayfort remains an idyllic place to call home for now. So landmark actions would include things like going to the Potion Master, visiting the Sage, the local healer, the Gilded Pack, and if we have a specific memory in slot 3 up on the region dashboard, which was the track along the bottom that you currently can't see, we would have to have a memory with A in that slot in order to take this particular action, and it would actually be 2 in terms of its cost for fishing at the lake, whereas all these other ones are just 1. So for right now, we're going to focus on going to the Potion Master. I want to gain some empowerment to my deck. In order to do that action, I'm spending 1 card from my hand of 5 in order to do that action. So let's go in the discard pile. We're also going to have to go ahead and spend 10 coins. So I'll spend 10 of my 15 that I started with in order to gain this boon. When you gain a card, you're going to take that card and shuffle it into your deck. So I shuffle the Empower card right into my deck, which makes an instant impact to the future of my character. Now, it's worth mentioning, if you ever gain a card, whether it's in combat or in the overworld being what we're presently in right now, exploring the region, you immediately shuffle it into the deck as I just did. But if you're gaining more than 1 copy of a card from an effect, let's say we were picking up 2 Empowered for some reason, we'd be shuffling half those cards into the character's deck and placing the other half into the discard pile, so it'd be a 1 and 1. Now, if the number of copies gained is an odd number, let's say you're picking up 3 of a particular card, then you shuffle the extra card into your deck. This is a very important rule to remember every single time you gain a card in the game. So our character's been magically boosted now. We are ready to head to Herstead. In order to do this, we need to travel. And as I mentioned before, if you're traveling along roads, it only costs 1 card discarded to go from region to adjacent region. If you're going into a region that does not have a road connected to the region you're moving from, it's going to cost you 2 cards. So if we look at Bayfort right here, inside of this region, the road goes across the bridge, which is A-OK, down this road here, and this is considered adjacent to this is considered adjacent to this, and so on all the way around. But Bayfort essentially can go down this road here, 1, then 2 into this region, 3, and then 4 to get all the way to Herstead. So to pull that off, we're going to be using every single card we have in our hand, all 4 of them discarded. It is possible you could have cards in your hand that you didn't end up using during your character turn. In that case, they are still discarded, and at this point, we're drawing up 5. And here's a look at the 5 cards that I got. We have Swordplay, we have Empowered, the one that was shuffled in, showed up, Guard, Second Wind, and finally Strike. Now, while drawing up the 5 cards in your hand, if you happen to not have any more cards left in your deck, you're going to have to reshuffle your deck. In order to do that, you take your discard pile, shuffle it back together to create a new deck, and when you do, you're going to increase your fatigue by 1. Now, thematically, this is bang on. As I mentioned before, your character is your deck, and so if you churn through that deck too quickly, you are going to be pushing your fatigue too quick. And why that matters is as you take hits to your health, which is going to affect your maximum health, dropping your health marker down, if it ever meets the fatigue token or goes lower than it, you are going to take a wound, and then you reset your health marker back up to your max health. So in essence, if you're fatiguing yourself too much by burning through your deck too quickly, and you're also taking damage on the sides, reducing your health, that really has a nasty combination for a lot of wounds. And then of course that ties right back to your maximum wounds you can take before you go unconscious. Now before I continue with gameplay, hypothetically if I was controlling another character, that character would also have its character turn and have gone through similar steps, likely landing in the same spot as us as we're trying to go after that main quest potentially together. We now go into the enemy turn and there's no enemies, so we can skip right past this and go straight into the end of round. The end of round has us rolling the region die. If there's characters in the overworld, we roll a region die once for each location that contains at least one character. Now we only got one character anyway, so we're rolling a single region die. The region die is a D6 and it has two major icons on it, the boot, which is for mob movement, and the leaf, which is for adventure. And there's differences in terms of seeing the boot for mob movement for the values. You'll see 2 and 1, for instance, and you can start to see the differences across the die. You'll also see that there is a blank one as well. So let's go ahead and roll the die and see what we get. Now in this case, if I happen to roll a mob movement icon, it would be taken as a blank because essentially there is no mobs in play. But I did get the leaf, which is adventure, so in this case, we are going to go ahead and draw an adventure card. There are two types of adventure cards. You got immediate ones and ongoing ones, and the word will be right underneath the title, so in this case, it's immediate, which are resolved right away. If it's ongoing, it acts like a personal mini quest that stays with your character until it's completed. The adventure is called Broken Wheel, and it says, Farmer Dell is struggling to repair a broken cartwheel. I gotta get these cucumbers to market before they go bad, he says. I'm in a real pickle. Can you lend a hand? There are 3 different options we have here. This adventure gives us 3 options, but only 2 are doable, and that's because the 2 that are doable are challenges that we can try to complete, whereas the C option here has us losing 2 supplies that I don't have, so I can't choose that option. Options A or B is considered a challenge. It has the values of success in the middle there, so if we get a 4 through 6 or a 4 through 6 on either of those options when we're drawing cards from our deck, then we are able to succeed at that. So I have to pick which one I'm going after first, and it matters because you can actually see here the keyword that can potentially modify things as well, plus or minus if I see the body keyword for A and mind for B. I'm going to go with option A, so we're going to choose to lift the cart while Dell repairs the wheel, and we're looking for the keyword body to give us that ability to manipulate the values here. So let's go ahead with the first card off the top of the deck, and it ends up not being something we want to see. This one is no good for me. As you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, the value is 0, so that's not helping me get to the success criteria I need for the challenge, and so I want to continue drawing cards in order to try to get there. But of course, that is also whittling away my deck, which is going to push me towards fatigue quicker. So as you go through the challenge, the first thing you'll do is reveal the first card. You'll also take a look at the value in the bottom right. You'll also check to see if there's any keywords that actually allow you that plus or minus bonus. In this case, no. Right here, this one actually has a 4, so it gives me 4, but it also lets me plus or minus the value by 1, which is pretty cool, but I don't need to in this case because I'm already sitting nicely right inside of the success area. So I chose to stop after the second card because I got exactly what I wanted, and the cards I used go into the discard pile. We now get to resolve the success criteria of this card by flipping it over. But before we do, I want to talk about the fail side of the equation. As you would inside of blackjack, if you push yourself over the success criteria and you don't have a way to modify it back down from a keyword, then yes, you have failed that attempt. And at that point, you go and resolve the failed side of the equation for this card. Now, the other thing to mention is in this situation, you'll notice when I stopped, I have no more draw pile anymore. So you might think, go ahead and reshuffle the draw pile and move your fatigue up by 1. You don't do this automatically. You only do it when you actually need to draw a card and there isn't any to draw. Flipping over the card, we can see the success or fail of any of the options, and we chose option A and we were successful. So it says, Dell finishes a quick repair while you strain. Good enough to get me to market, says Dell. We gain 5 coins and 4 XP, and we shuffle in adventure AH36. This is going to be one of the adventure cards that was put off to the side at the very beginning. So I'll take those 5 coins, and I've jumped my track up by 4 XP. And based on our success from the adventure, we're shuffling this card into the adventure deck. Now, this is just a hypothetical situation that doesn't occur right now because I don't have two characters in play, but let's say I did have another character in play. When I rolled that region die, it applies that same icon to both characters, which means both characters would be able to draw an adventure card. And so the second character would hypothetically get this one here, which you can see from the keyword underneath the title is called ongoing. That hypothetical character would place this card next to their dashboard, and then in the future, before a rest, they could try to make their way to this adventure, and once they get there, by traveling to it, they could then go ahead and spend one card from their hand in order to interact with it, to go on the adventure, flipping it over and resolving it. Now, the key thing here is doing this before you rest, because as soon as you rest, you are going to place every single ongoing adventure that you have, which can only be a maximum of one for each character, back to the adventure deck. And finally, you can also see the icon of the token you'll use in order to track it on the region board. But for the purposes of this is for a hypothetical character that is not part of my party, because my party is only comprised of one individual, so it's not much of a party at the moment. And so because of that, we'll just skip on by. And that, my friends, is a first round of gameplay from Threshold. Let's resolve any start of round effects. We don't currently have any, so we're going right into the character's turn. But first, we're inside the landmark Hearthstead. We might as well check out the region book. Where the hustle meets the bustle, Hearthstead has grown from an agricultural market into a major trade center. More and more Heartlanders are moving to the city to seek new opportunities and a peaceful daily existence away from the increasing chaos outside its walls. Now, this provides a number of options for you. You can go rest, you can go to the market, you can go to the blacksmith. There's Vocation Square, the Healer, the Ugly Pumpkin Tavern, and Old Abe's Barrels here, but you have to have a certain memory in order to pull that one off. But you can see here for the Healer, only spending 5 coins allows me to remove a wound, and I have one to get rid of. So all I need to do is spend 5 coins searching my hand, discard, or my deck in order to find the wound and remove it. The card has been removed, and we'll go back to the wound deck, and also be sure to go ahead and update the tracker in the top right. Now, the Healer did have a cost of 1 associated to it, so we have to make sure we discard 1 card should it technically happen before we actually resolved it. In the end, I decided to discard Second Wind. Now, our overall aim is still to try and defeat the bandits that are guarding the berries right here, so in order to get there, I'm going to have to go ahead and travel from this adjacent location and pay 2 cards because there's no road attaching them. I'm discarding Guard and Strike to get enough to be able to move from this region to an adjacent one right here. Now that we're inside the location, we're going to do what is called engaging. And you'll see it's an engage as it shows a keyword right on the pie delivery quest card. And when you engage, that action costs a card. I'm going to discard Swordplay. I only have Empowered left in my hand. It's worth mentioning in order to do the engage action, you have to be in a space with a mob token, an encampment, or a quest token. This is a quest token. Also worth noting, to engage in a quest encounter, no characters can be currently engaged in another combat. The quest encounters are scaled to the total number of characters in play, or the party size. In my case, it's just 1, so it's best to only engage a quest encounter when the rest of the characters are able to join. Now, after performing the engage action, you draw up to your max hand size, which is 5. And at this point, because we're told to draw and we don't have any cards in our deck right now, we are going to be reshuffling our discard pile to create a new deck, and that's going to increase our fatigue by 1. So my fatigue has increased. We have a deck to draw from now. We still had 1 card in hand. We're drawing up the additional 4 to get to our max limit of 5. Off the top of the deck, we have Strike. Then we have Defensive Stance, so a little bit of offense, a little bit of defense. Then we have Strike yet again, and Dash. Now, on the hypothetical front, if you happen to have a second character in play, it's worth mentioning there's something known as following into combat. So this means it's possible for characters to end their turn at a location and all engage in combat at once on the very first turn of the next round. So when one character engages, all the other characters in the same location who have not yet taken a turn that round can immediately follow that character into combat. And the characters enter the combat together, and all of them are included in the combat setup. But it's also a-okay to have somebody jump into combat that's already been set up, and they'll just continue the rest of their turn inside of combat once they're set up. Combat inside the game begins from quests, mob tokens in the overworld, or other events that can occur. Now, on the actual quest that we're engaging with in the top right-hand corner, you'll see an HP 01. We're going to go to the encounter book for the Highland Prairies, and that's going to tell us what's going on for the setup of this combat. Here's a look inside the encounter book for the quest, and you'll see information across the top per the number of characters currently in play. It is not based on the number of characters currently in the combat, but currently in the game. We can see we're dealing with a thief here on this combat board, and we'll be placing that where the region board is right now. This is the combat board for the encounter, and we also grab the enemy type card as well, which will tell us a number of things we need to know about the enemy. The most important thing right now is taking a look at the very top for the combat deck, 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A shuffled together. Here are the 4 cards that were called upon. We have 1A all the way through to 4A. We're going to shuffle these up, and this will make the enemy deck. With the enemy combat deck now shuffled and in place, and some enemies may have their deck staged in a certain order and not shuffled at all, we're now going to go ahead and place our enemy and myself into the combat area. The book shows E1, E2, E3, and E4 positions. These are for all the different enemies depending again on the actual player count within the game. So for me, we're going to have one enemy showing up in the top left-hand corner in red, and then you'll see P1 all the way through to P4 for the player or characters that you're controlling. And for me, I'll be in the P1 position. And the objective is to defeat all enemies, so we need to take this one thief down. It's also worth mentioning that if I had 3 characters and I was playing multi-handed and I ran into a combat by myself with just 1 character and the other 2 characters were off doing something else, I'd be going into this combat with 3 enemies, and of course that would be a bit more tough. So when playing with a party, you'll have to choose your battles wisely in terms of how you split up the party and what you try and accomplish. Now with one enemy coming in, I find the matching thief token, which is going to track the health of this thief, and you can see the health will be at 8. The health of the enemies is tracked all the way around the combat board, so in this case we're going to place the one enemy, which has a 1 right on the token, in position 8. Make sure the standee and the health token match in terms of their value so that you can keep track of which enemy has how much health. Now on the back of the encounter book is a very handy reference of all the major icons in the game, so if you ever come across something you're not sure of, you can flip this booklet over to quickly see exactly what it is. In the future, if we take down the thief, we're going to get ourselves a loot die to roll, a supply, as well as 2 coins. Going through the middle of the card, we know the health is at 8. Next up is the damage value at 2. Then you have a block value for defensive purposes at 2. It will block up to 2 every time it does. You keep track of the block status going along right here for number 1 because I only have 1 enemy. If you have up to 4, you can track separately across all of them perfectly. And then finally, you have the enemy movement or spread value, which in this case is 1. The final thing to mention around setup on the combat board is you might have an objective token that is placed inside of this area, and if it is, the encounter book will tell you. At this point, we're all set up for combat. There's one thing you need to keep in mind when you go into combat. It's a good idea to take a look at the top card of each of the enemy type decks. The top card of the deck is going to give you a clue as to what this enemy is going to try and accomplish on its turn. It's got a medium range attack in this case, as well as enemy movement or spread. Characters start off the combat, so my Guardian is going first, and first we check for any start of turn effects and resolve them. We don't currently have any. As my character activates, I can take any number of actions so long as I can fulfill the costs of those actions, and it's worth mentioning, it's not required to perform every action that's possible. The major action is play, where you simply play cards from your hand, but you do have to be aware of the cost of that card. You'll see the cost in the top left. In this case, this one is 0, so I could play this as is and take the play effect. I wouldn't have to worry about discarding any cards in order to play it, whereas if I wanted to go ahead and use a strike, for example, I first have to discard 1 card, and then I can play strike in order to take advantage of targeting an adjacent enemy and dealing 3 damage. So overall, I have a pretty good setup here because I got a strike in hand, another strike, my empowered boon is in my hand, as well as a dash, and finally a defensive stance. Now before I pick the cards that I want to play, let's talk about zones and adjacency, because the structure of the combat board does matter. You'll see different zones of different colors. There's a total of 5 of them. Any hexes of the same color are considered to be part of the same zone. If you'd like to move between adjacent hexes that are in different zones, it doesn't impede movement in any way. It's worth knowing that the zones themselves inherently have no gameplay effect, but there's effects on character and enemy cards that will reference certain zones, usually when specifying the target of an attack. When we get into targeting, for example, with enemies in the future, we'll talk about the 4 major ones you're going to run into, which is a melee attack, short-ranged attack, medium-ranged attack, and long-range attack. And that's where understanding what zones are all about will come in very handy. Now let's move on to adjacency. Adjacency on the boards, of course, are when 2 hexes share a border. So for example, if my character was here and we're sharing a border between 2 hexes, that's adjacency. We would still be considered adjacent if one individual is in one zone and the other is in another zone, but we're still sharing a border. And zones are considered adjacent based on their groupings of color. So for instance, this one here of a darker blue is adjacent to green and also adjacent to the brownish tan color. Now you understand adjacency and zones, let's talk about how different types of attacks actually matter for these 2 terms. So first off, if you're talking about melee attacks, you need to be adjacent physically to the enemy that you're attacking. So in order to pull off a melee attack, I need to actually be right beside, literally sharing a border to the enemy. A short-range attack can be pulled off if you're literally adjacent, just like melee combat, or you're anywhere within the same zone of that enemy is legal. A medium range attack targets those that are non-adjacent to you inside your own zone or an adjacent zone. So for instance, these two spots would not be legal for a medium ranged attack, but this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one could be. And it also includes the two adjacent zones to it, which is everything inside of this one here and everything inside of this one here. And finally, long-range attacks target everything not in your current zone. So for instance, if I was over here, I could easily shoot this one from long range. If I was over here, no problem. Here, no problem for long range. Here, no problem. But as soon as I'm here, I can no longer do long range. That probably puts things in perspective for you. Let's now play our very first card. This is going to be an immediate one based on the bolt symbol. It costs nothing else in terms of discarded cards. And this one here is going to allow me to play moving up to 2 spaces. And that is perfect. It's exactly what I need to get adjacent to this enemy. Now let's play my Boon card, Empowered. It is an immediate one from the lightning bolt in the top left-hand corner. No cost, no discarding of cards for it. It says play. The next instant attack card you play this turn deals double its normal damage, and then this card is exiled. The card I'm going to play is called Strike. It's going to cost 1 in order to do it, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of 1 card from my hand. It'll be another strike used to pay for this. So we're going to go ahead and discard this one here in order to pay the cost for that other strike, and we're going to see what it does. Based on it being doubled, it's going to target an adjacent enemy, dealing 3 damage, which now means 6. My enemy has no block token in its row here, so it has no ability to stop the damage coming towards it, so 6 damage going straight through drops it from 8 all the way to 2, which is a pretty solid hit. Now I do have 1 more card in hand, but I don't have a card to pay for it, so that's going to be it. So we now go to my character's end of turn, resolving all end of turn effects in the order of my choice on the cards that are in play. I don't currently have any looking across the cards, so we skip right past that. My character is now going to move into resetting, which discards all the instant cards played this turn. I've got a number of those. And that's going to end up being all the cards I play, which all have a lightning bolt symbol in the top left-hand corner. If I had played out this card right here with a different symbol in the top left-hand corner, it would have stayed. And any remaining cards in your hand still are discarded. And last but not least, we drop a new hand of 5 cards, and it could go higher than the default of 5 through various gameplay effects. And I ended up having enough cards in my deck to draw 5 without having to fatigue myself any further, which is nice. We got Swordplay, Guard, another Guard, Defensive Stance, and Second Wind. Into the enemy's turn we go. The Thief is going to be doing a running shot, medium range, and something around movement. Let's find out exactly what that is. It is a running shot, medium range attack, and it's a retreat that has to do with movement. It says target a non-adjacent character in your zone or an adjacent zone. Deal your damage value, which in this case for this character is a 2 plus 1, so it'll be 3. Then retreat 2 away from the closest character. So strategically, it was a perfect move to get up close and personal with this enemy, knowing it was going to be a medium-ranged attack based on what we saw on the opposite side of the card. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the retreat for this character, or the enemy I should say, moving 2 away from me. And this is the only way it can go and the furthest away it could go. Whenever you resolve an enemy card, simply discard it, and if you no longer have a deck for that enemy type, make sure you reshuffle the deck at the point you lose all cards in the deck, because it's going to give you advanced information based on the top card as to what's coming in the future. So as you can see, the next one is going to also be a medium-ranged attack. All right, so it's back to my character turn, and good thing it didn't attack me because I had no defense up, and it would have definitely impacted my health. Let's go ahead and choose some cards to use from hand, potentially to move closer to it yet again to try and negate strategically that medium-ranged attack. Now, as you saw on my first turn, I used a dash card to move originally, allowing me to move up to 2 spaces, which was quite handy having that in my hand. Now, this time, I don't have movement in the 5 cards in my hand, but I generically have 1 movement from my Guardian so long as I can discard that equal number of cards from my hand. I can take advantage of that move. So for every move I want to make, I discard a single card in my case. Now this card normally would be really handy as an instant card, not paying anything in order to draw a card, but again, that's burning through my deck quicker. Might be a great thing in a situation where you need more cards in hand. Right now I'm going to discard this just to get the move. So I'll get myself tucked up real close to that enemy. And now in position right next to the enemy, I'm going to go ahead and discard this card here for 1, allowing me to pay for this card. I'm going to play it right now. It's called Swordplay. It's going to allow me to target each adjacent. It's each adjacent enemy, so there's multiples. You can actually swing and hit multiple for 2 damage, which is exactly what I need in order to kill this one off. That's going to do it, and this individual is dead. Now, there's all kinds of facets of the combat system you're going to find as you continue to play through the game, but one thing I need to mention, because we didn't see it during this combat, is around defense. So when the actual block is gained by the thief through various cards, you're going to go ahead and place a token on the corresponding thief that gained the block. So in this case, you put it in the first position, and the first time it takes some damage, it's going to go ahead and block up to 2 based on this icon right here. So if I'm throwing 3 damage at it, it would discard the token completely in order to have only 1 damage come through. If I had this up to here and I was doing, say, 6 damage, this would be able to block twice for a total of 4, and that means only 2 would be getting through, and so on. So essentially, the block can really beef up on these enemies to the point where they basically make your attacks null and void. Also, as you go through combat, you get status effects you can place on the enemy. They'll be tracked in these areas here on this card. And you can see the one on the far left, that token with the frost icon of the snowflake, basically means immobilize. So enemies with this token will not move on their turn. So when you're resolving the card talking about movement, nothing will happen that way and the token is discarded. In the middle with the tornado icon is stunned, so enemies with this token do literally nothing on their turn, ignores all effects on the combat cards, they resolve this turn, and then the token is discarded. Last but not least is ethereal, so enemies with this token cannot be targeted by any player card effects, affects, abilities, which comes from item cards, which we haven't touched on yet, or interacting with actions. So you remove the token, of course, after this is done, but this is going to protect the enemy. Long story short, combat encounters can end in multiple ways. Now for us, because of the encounter book, it told us the objective was to defeat all enemies. So the second you do, that is going to end the combat encounter. You might have an encounter in the book that you're going through that tells you still need to do an objective, so it wouldn't be complete until that is done. Now the objective of trying to kill all the enemies is automatically failed if all the characters retreat or become unconscious, or if the encounter rules specify any other situation. And once this is all resolved, you're going to go back to the overworld in the region location that you engaged in combat. Ending off the combat, all the cards that were here played on the table are in the discard, and the cards that were still in hand are still in my hand. You can continue your turn from here, but first, we need to deal with rewards and also talk about a bag for enemies. First, we'll go to the rewards of this card. For the enemy in the top left-hand corner, we're going to be rolling a loot die, and we're also going to be getting a supply and 2 coins. So we got our 2 gold here, which will go into the 5 we have for a total of 7. We have 1 supply, and we get a loot die, which we don't roll right now. We will roll as part of a rest action when we get to town. Now, after dealing with an enemy type for the very first time, you're going to find the enemy bag, which is going to be empty from the very beginning of the game. But as you encounter every new enemy, and once you're done with them, you're going to go ahead and take all the tokens you dealt with, including all the other ones that are numbered numerically. So there's 4 here, and all 4 of these go into the enemy bag for the future. So this essentially scales up the game in terms of the enemies that you've encountered and what you will encounter in the future as you go through gameplay. So thematically, as the characters face more enemies in quests, the danger faced in random encounters and at encampments grows. We'll touch more on random encounters in the future, but you can see an encampment example right here in the bottom left-hand corner in this location. When you complete a quest, you'll flip over the quest card after completion and also flip over the token to the checkmark side so that you know that it's complete. It'll tell you on the quest where you can actually cash in for rewards at the bottom here. You're going to see we need to complete at Herstead. So the token is then updated to the location we need to complete it at, and when you get back to Herstead and inside the how to play, we're simply able to warp there. Otherwise, you'd normally travel, spending a card along a road if you happen to be on one, and if you don't, in this case, I am not, I'd be spending 2 cards. Now the teleport is not free. The teleport discards all cards in your hand. Ironically, I only have 2 cards in my hand, so whether I chose to walk normally across this rugged terrain to get there, not on a road, or I teleported, it still burns all the cards because I only have 2 in hand anyway. We can now complete the quest. We go to Pie Delivery here and check out the rewards section, which tells us we're going to gain another loot die, so it's going to be awesome. So we'll have a second one. We're also gaining 3 coins, but I'll get rid of 2 in order to get a 5. And then finally, we're gaining 10 XP, jumping ourselves from 4 to 14. Excellent, Dren exclaims. These are the most succulent clover berries I've seen in a long time. He looks at your bedraggle gear. I hope you didn't have much trouble gathering them. Here, take a few berries and come back later when the pies are ready. Now the conclusion steps here say gain a quest, home invasion. That's going to be this one right here. And as you can see, it's going to be a level 1 requirement in order to go after it. So likely while we're here in this landmark location, we will try to get ourselves up to that level. It says engage as an action, defend Herstead from monsters, and it states below, Dren asks you to deliver the pies, and as you approach the council tent, an argument rages inside. We must protect our home. Panic will disrupt the trade. How long have you known? As you listen, an alarm sounds at the city gate. Shadowy monsters are attacking. The council leaders rush out, see you, and yell, "Why are you waiting? Protect Herstead." So pie delivery is complete, so this token would normally go back to here, but because the new active quest is also a main one, we're going to continue using this one and placing it where it's illustrated, which is right here. Let's do a rest action inside of Landmark, and I'll show you how that works. Now, first you discard all cards in hand, but I currently don't have any in hand. We also discard any ongoing adventures. Every character can have one which is ongoing. If it's sitting next to your dashboard and you have one, it's discarded at this point. And it's worth mentioning it's discarded back into the adventure deck. Now, at this point, we're going to go ahead and reset our fatigue and our health values. So our health was already at 6. We weren't hit at all during combat, which is nice, but our fatigue was ticked up by 1. It drops down to 0. Now we discard any status cards from our deck or our discard pile. This includes any boons or any burdens that we have in there, but wounds, of course, stay. In this case, we had nothing to worry about status cards wise, so we now go ahead and shuffle our entire deck to recreate a new one. And when reshuffling your deck as part of a rest, of course, you're not going to uptick your fatigue as you're resting. We now get to roll for loot. We take all the loot dice we've accumulated up to this point and roll them. So we've got 2 here. Let's go ahead and give them a roll, and I'll talk about the icons as we see them. A solid roll for loot overall. We got ourselves a common item with the C, and this one is 2 gold. And now if you see a UC, that's going to be an uncommon, or an R is rare, at least in the prototype. In the final version, there'll be different icons of glowing capacity, most likely, based on the designer's thoughts in terms of making that more clear across multiple languages. But long story short, we got a common item coming in, and we got 2 gold. So we now are up to a total of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 total. We got ourselves worn leather that comes with a skill point towards reflex. I've equipped that to my character and also gone ahead and checked reflex on the character pad. Now let's talk about the icon I didn't get as part of my roll, which is an up arrow. You can either combine 2 up arrows of the same tier into a higher tier die and roll it right away, or you can re-roll 1 die of the tier that you actually got. If you roll another up arrow on the re-roll, you cannot re-roll it again, and you may still combine it later. So if you get 2 arrows like this, you can go ahead and choose to take these 2 away, and you can go to the next tier die. When you rest, you can reorganize your inventory, maximum of 1 weapon, 1 armor, and 2 accessories. You also get a chance to level up, and it depends on how much XP you have. We currently have 14, and to go to level number 1, we need 10 XP. In order to do this, simply spend the XP on your dial and also fill in the appropriate space. Also, my class should have been filled in earlier, not a big deal. It is Guardian, as you know. Now, something that's important not to miss is right underneath of each level up, you're going to see potentially an icon. Now, we don't get one until we get to level 3, but underneath of it, you're going to see your max health is going to go up by 1. And underneath here, you're going to see your max wounds is going to go up by 1. And that's going to continue throughout all these levels. Now, an extremely fun part of the game is updating your character deck. You're gaining class points as well as skill points as you go through the game. Here's a look at all of the skill cards you could potentially pick up. Their costs are shown at the very bottom with an SP value underneath. And then you can see for CP, which is your class points, this is going to tie directly to the class that your character is. In my case, Guardian. I've got a deck of cards here. On the class point side of the equation, every single time you level up, you gain a class point. So we have 1 to spend right now. And there's all kinds of cool things you could potentially put in your deck, but again, you have to have the CP in order to do it. So I could actually pull a dash into my deck right now. I could actually take Martial Prowess as an example. This one here costs 2. So at this point and onwards, I cannot put these cards in because I don't have enough class points yet. But as you can see, as you go further on, these class points are going to allow you to pick up cards in your deck specific to your Guardian that are going to be very powerful as it increases over time. Some pretty awesome cards towards the back here. Now, I've already got Dash in my deck, but there wouldn't be any problem with adding more because it allows me to move quicker. But I'm going to go with Martial Prowess. This one says play, add a melee or shield card from your discard pile to your hand. Sounds very useful. And this is a maximum in the deck of 2. This goes and shuffles right into your deck right now when you gain it. Next up is skill points, which you have a number of decks to take a look through. So first off, you're going to add up the skill icons on your equipped weapons and class reference board to determine your total SP for each skill. So you simply take a look at your reference board here. The innate skills show 1 point for Bladecraft, 1 point for Aegis, 1 point for Momentum. You also add in any points off your items. So we have another Aegis down here. So we have a total of 2. Hence the reason why if you go into the deck right now, we have 2 cards for Aegis in the deck currently, and both of them are guard cards. You'll see it in the bottom left-hand corner. But now that we've equipped a brand new item, Worn Leather, we have a +1 point in Reflex. So from all the skill decks available, you find the Reflex specific deck. Inside the reflex skill set, we got an SP value of 1 for the dodge card, so we can absolutely take one of these and place it in our deck. Or we could go, actually we can't, this one is SP2 and it continues to go on up from there. So we'll have to gain more in the reflex in order to be able to pick up higher tiered cards in the future. But for right now, we'll place 1 dodge in our deck. Now, as you go through gameplay, you might get a skill point increase in one you already have. So you're actually going up to a higher level. You can go after higher tiered cards in that case. You can choose any combination of skill cards as long as the SP cost is equal to or less than the available skill points that you have. Something else to keep in mind, as things progress with your character and you start to get more points that you can spend, you want to think about the fact that your deck is getting bigger, which makes it less often that your fatigue token is going to be moving up. So even if you take a look at the reflex skill cards and you go, I have a point to spend, but I really don't want that dodge card right now, you might want to still put it in your deck because you can use it for other things during gameplay, and it also makes your deck bigger, which means you're fatiguing less often, as I mentioned. So keep that in mind. Now, we also ended off in Herstead, and here there's narrative text to read. There's also a ton of potential things we could do inside of this landmark, so you can, at this point in time, go ahead and check out anything here. And in order to do those landmark actions, you'll need a fresh hand of cards. You'll be drawing 5 cards up. I got Strike, Dodge, Empowered, Swordplay, and Strike. At the end of our rest, we're going to remove all mob tokens and completed tokens from the region board if there happens to be any. There isn't in this case. After a rest, we now place all new mob tokens on their starting spaces according to the region book setup. And as you can clearly see, we have 5 mobs coming in at various levels in various locations. Let's populate the Heartland regions with a number of mobs. At this point, you are ready to explore the overworld, spend cards to act, face enemies in tactical combat, and return to town to recover and grow stronger. Every decision and outcome throughout the game is going to have an impact on your character, which is going to be reflected in the deck. You'll also gain memories as you go through the game, which will be sorted across the bottom row of the region board, and these are going to also lead to various paths within gameplay. At this point, we have the home invasion main quest to go after next. We have a number of mobs that have shown up in the region in various locations we can check out. And as we complete this next main quest and move further in the game, there's other tokens on the region board that will come out for side quests and branching choices that we can make as our character evolves and we continue to push through the story of the game. This, of course, will unlock a whole bunch of new opportunities within the Heartland Prairies, just part of the prototype, as the final version will have multiple regions to be inside of. Again, this is the level 1 to 15 area. And that, my friends, wraps up my how to play video for Threshold from Open Owl Games, landing on GameFound in the very near future. The exact date and the link to the campaign page in the pinned comment and video description. And it's worth mentioning, if you have any thoughts around what you've seen here, be sure to throw them in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, the interest level around it. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for more gameplay in the near future. And as always, keep on rolling solo.